Women's Pro Singles from the 2019 Texas Open, Simone Jardim at the bottom of the screen and Michelle Esquivel at the top. I'm interested in the depth of the return of serve and what it does to the server. Does it force her to play from on the baseline? Does it allow her to come inside the baseline? Or does the return force her behind the baseline? And you can see right there, Esquivel's return allowed Jardim to come inside the baseline, so inside gets a tick mark. Jardim's return was short as well, allowing Esquivel to come inside the baseline. And so I would keep doing this, and because I'm not interested in one particular player, or I'm not coaching one player, I don't need data just about that one person, I'm going to collect this for the whole match, or at least we started partway through game number 1 here. And so this is a way to get a sense of what's going on in a particular game or in a particular sort of series of points. If I was coaching one particular player, I would, do more of these statistics just for her rather than for both of them. Right now I'm watching this at 2x speed. This makes things go a little bit quicker, so I can actually get a larger sample size of points in a shorter period of time. And I will typically do this if what I'm looking for is pretty easy to identify. In this case, it's like, okay, on the baseline, inside the baseline, or behind the baseline. If the thing I'm looking at is a little more subtle, let's say, for example, the height of the ball when a player is at the net and receives a shot from the player at the baseline, then I might have to slow things down a little bit because it's more subtle and it takes a more subtle eye to see it. But in this case, it's a pretty basic and rudimentary kind of stat that I'm trying to keep here. Where does the return of serve force the server to play from? So let's see right now. Oh, that serve is out, so I don't count that one. If the return is in or out, I'm not collecting that data right now. I could do that and add another category. So right now at the end of that first game, you can see that 7 and now 8 of the returns of serve force the server to be behind the baseline, and it's about a split between on the baseline or inside the baseline for now. We'll see if that changes. I think this is actually a more useful stat than the depth of the return. Sometimes you hear people talk about charting how deep a return is, where it lands in the court, and that can be okay, but it doesn't really tell the kind of story I want it to tell, right? Typically we care about deep returns for what it does, or short returns for that matter, what it does to the opponent. And so let's imagine that a ball lands at 3/4 court. Well, what that ball landing at 3/4 court will do to the opponent, let's say the server, will differ depending on other characteristics about that ball. A ball that lands at 3/4 court that is hit slowly with no spin and maybe is fairly low, that ball is likely going to invite the server to come inside the baseline to hit it. But a same ball that lands at 3/4 court that's hit faster, that's got topspin on it, maybe is a bit higher, so it's going to have a bigger rebound, that's a ball that could actually force the person to play from on or behind the baseline. So to me, it's less interesting to know where the ball lands in terms of depth, and more interesting to see what it does to the server. You can see now at this point that most of the returns, a good proportion of them, are being hit, forcing the server to be well behind the baseline. You saw another example of it there. And as the coach, I would have to do something with this data. And that's sort of the difference between data and knowledge, right? Or data and understanding. It's one thing to collect the stats, but what do you do with those stats? What kind of sense do you make of them? And so we look right now and they're approaching 20 returns of serve that have forced, now it's 20 returns of serve that have forced the server back. Is that good? Is that bad? Is it in line with the goals that I've set for my player? If I'm working with a particular player, is it different? Are we seeing a change in the sport? And so data collection is just one aspect, and this is a relatively easy thing to do. Anyone can do this at home. You can watch some videos of yourself or other people and put the tick marks. The next thing, and this is where it takes a little more expertise, is like, how do you interpret that data? What does it mean? In this case, since you may be saying, well, tell us, Mark, what does it mean that they're this deep? To me, it's interesting. We're still seeing, even though the returns of serve are fairly deep, that often it's not causing much trouble for the server. We saw another example of it there by Simone. So that might be something I pay attention to. I might start to ask whether the serves could be hit differently so that the returns aren't always that deep, right? Is there something you could do if, let's say you're coaching Simone, is there something that she could do with her serve to make it so Esquivel can't push her back behind the baseline as often? Anyway, let's do some quick tabulation here. There were 5 returns that allowed the server inside, 8 that forced her to play from on, and 27 that forced the server to be behind the baseline. That's out of 40 total, so I got to do some quick math here, and that tells me that 20% of the time she was on the baseline, 12.5% of the time she was inside the baseline, and a whopping 67.5% of the time hitting that third shot from behind the baseline.